I'm quite confused. I just played a match of Breach executable, and this area looked completely different, but upon coming back here, it looks like it always has. I also just played a mission in a cistern where the lake was completely dried up and it looked way different, but it just looks like it always has now. Surely the Well of Flame looks different. No, it looks like the Well of Flame is the exact same as it's always been for the past 6 years. That's rather bizarre. I wonder why none of the changes that were made in the missions are in patrol. I find myself sat on Nessus whilst it's in a very awkward state. Nessus seems to be stuck in week 1 of this episode, essentially. We have the data particles flaring up from the ground, we've got the occasional earthquake, we've got Vex with the cones around their necks, the collars, and there's certain areas which have changed, but the vast majority of the place is the exact same. So, if I were to go and take a look at where the Echo first arrived on Nessus, we will find that the area has changed, but yet the vast majority of the rest of the place has not, which is quite honestly bizarre to me. As we can see, there's the collars on the Vex. Not that the Vex act any differently, it's just aesthetics. Nessus is changing, it's being terraformed in a certain way. The Vex are changing, Nessus itself is changing, but yet basically everywhere we're visiting in missions and the seasonal activity, breach executable, and the such, are not having the changes we see reflected here. This is the area where the Echo first arrived on Nessus, and you can see it's changed. It looks exactly how it looked in the first mission that we played. And this area has actually changed. It's got the data particles flowing upwards, it's got the Echo that's smashed through the planet, there's the big hole in the roof. Not that it actually is a hole, interestingly enough. But yeah, this area is different, but yet whenever you go to the Well of Flame, when you go to the Cistern, whenever you go to the Tangle, it looks like it always has. Another place that has changed is the Well of Echoes. As we can see, the Tangle looks identical to how it has always looked, but the Well of Echoes has actually changed greatly. If we pop our heads down, we can see that it's all got a bunch of trees, it's all grassy. If we were to defeat everything in here, the floor would open up over there and it would bring us down to the Enigma Protocol node to start that mission. So that's really cool, I'm happy that that's there. But again, that's from week 1, and there's been a lot changed since then in the story, and we're effectively stuck in week 1. So do I think we will actually see Nessus change? I am slightly more positive than negative, but I'll go over that in a minute. First of all, I need to explain somewhat how the world changes in Destiny typically. We have 3 different types of change. We have player progression, we have community progression, and we have, let's call it Bungie progression. The first type, player progression, the environment or the world, the game changes depending upon how far you as a player get through your story. This is seen usually with NPCs sort of appearing and disappearing in different areas. We've had this with the Red War campaign where we were in the farm and certain vendors appeared depending upon where we'd been. So Kate arrived whenever we went to Nessus, Zavala arrived whenever we went to Titan, for example. We also saw this in Forsaken, where Petra was in the Tangled Shore, then she wasn't whenever we unlocked the Dreaming City and such like that. That's all sort of player progression. The extreme of this is Beyond Light, where we had the big massive ice wall near Elsie and beyond. When that disappears whenever you get through a few campaign missions, and the Ziggurat appears with the ice wall being destroyed. Funny interaction you can have there is if you have somebody in your fire team who hasn't done Beyond Light, and you can just walk towards a Ziggurat, and on their screen it'll look like you've just went into an ice wall. If I go riding in here, do I just vanish?
Yes.
Right, well,
What the fuck?
that's not very helpful.
What the fuck?
But those are sort of the player progression things. You never really see the environment change with player progression unless it's an extreme like Beyond Light. But even at that, that's not a patrol zone necessarily. That's not public. It is just whoever's in your fire team at that stage. Community-driven changes are changes with community events, for example. Repairing the Elixir Order was one of them, so the community hit certain goals and then the environment changes. You also have World First Raid completions, which see the environment get changed in different patrol areas. So upon a raid being completed in Forsaken, Last Wish for example, it unlocked the whole curse in the Dooming City. We had the raid get completed in Witch Queen, which saw Rogue's Pyramid get blown up. We saw the Witness get defeated in Salvation's Edge most recently, which led to the Monolith exploding, and now we've got the Pulses of Light coming out of the Traveller. Community-driven progression is whenever the community as a whole reach the goal, and then the game changes for everyone because of that goal being reached. The last is Bungie progression, or just real-time progression, I suppose. That is the likes of live events with, as we've seen in the past, the Almighty approaching the tower, that was real-time. We had the Traveller getting healed, which was real-time. We also have things which just sort of happen, which are changes to the game, which happen at sort of seasons. So this season even we've seen Nessus having the Nest quakes, and that's been happening since the start of the episode. Now that I've explained that, I can get into why I'm hopeful and not hopeful that the changes will be made. Firstly, on the negative side, it's Bungie. We have no idea what they're going to do. They've done amazing things in the past, and they've done terrible things in the past, which just contradict each other, and you never know what way they're going to go, really. To explain this, my second negative point is we've seen in the past they've made changes to patrol zones that just haven't been reflected in the actual patrol zone. We've seen battlegrounds in which the Lucent Hive are infiltrating areas of the EDZ and the Moon, Lucent Hive architectures appearing, Throne Worlds leaking in, but yet in Patrol that's not seen at all. And this is a Patrol area which is changing, but they didn't choose to reflect that in Patrol. We've had battlegrounds where the pyramid architecture is appearing from last year, the first season of Lightfall, where we were rescuing civilians in battlegrounds. The opening areas from all of those battlegrounds are in Patrol, the Cost Patrol and EDZ, and yet those changes aren't reflected in Patrol. So we've got that side. We've got the other side, which is positive, in which we've actually seen the changes get made. So we've got the bunker doors, which appeared in Season of the Worthy, I think it was, and that happened in Patrol. You can access the bunkers in Patrol and all that sort of stuff. We had the pyramids arriving during Season of Arrivals. We had Keidel's tank get plopped on Nessus, which is probably the most noticeable one, many seasons back. Most recently, we've had changes I've already talked about, which are the raid completion, so the Monolith being different than the Pale Heart and the such. So we've got arguments for both sides. In this one specific instance on Nessus, we see the patrol areas get changed in missions and in the seasonal event, which is very similar to the whole PSYOP situation, but yet we also see Nessus has already changed. So it could really swing either way, in my opinion. I'm a bit more hopeful because we already have seen changes get made. We see that the environment from the first mission where the Comet crashed, the Echo crashed, is actually changed in Patrol. We see the Well of Echoes looks completely different, so that's another positive change. But then we also see that the Cistern looks the same, the Tangle looks the same, where it should really be different. But we also have Nest Quakes, we also have the holograms appearing around the place. It's a bit 50-50, got things for both sides, but I have a potential theory about what way they could be angling this. I explained the technical aspect somewhat. My idea is, in order for Nessus to change currently, they would either have to change the patrol zone for everyone, or depending on how far through the quest you are, depending on how far through the act you are. And I can see that causing some issues for Bungie. Changing an entire patrol zone, depending upon how far through a quest you are, on paper sounds easy enough. You get to a certain step in the quest, you get loaded into a different version of the patrol zone. But I could see them want to avoid having two versions of a patrol zone. I don't think they've ever done that in the past. We've seen the tower have two versions at the same time. That's usually at seasonal events. Whenever the event is on the way out, reset happens, and you can still be in the Guardian Games version of the tower for another hour if you stay in that instance, but as soon as you leave and join again, you'll be in a normal tower. And that's sort of a way that you can have two instances, but that's not intended, and they are actively phasing out one and phasing in a new one. With Nessus, they would be keeping two in actual rotation, one for people who haven't touched the act, and another for people who have touched the act. And in addition to that, you would have the Tangle appear if you completed week 1, you would have the Cistern appear if you completed week 3, and it would get a bit muddy. I think it's probably too much work for the amount of result you get out of it. What I could see Bungie doing is, in a few weeks' time, when Act 2 comes out, they just make a blanket change where they will update the Cistern and the Tangle to reflect how they looked in the missions and the activities we've played. And by that stage, their reasoning would be enough time has passed that people who actually want to play Act 1 at the time that it's intended to be played had enough time and they could have played it, and if they haven't, it's on them, and they just have to deal with loading in the Nessus without having played the act and looking different. And that's just the situation of Bungie progression, Destiny progression, or just real-time progression, basically. So that's what I personally hope, and I think is a bit more likely, is that Act 2 will roll around and they'll make these changes. The fact that they compared the two different versions of the Cistern in the trailer for the episode, the fact that we've already had changes made on Nessus, and the fact that, you know, some of those changes are actually a result of playing missions and such, make me quite hopeful that we'll see the changes. But on the other hand, it's Bungie and we've seen them do the exact opposite in the past. So who knows? But anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I hope this video is not too long. That's my rant, sort of. That's my thoughts. But I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider leaving a like, maybe even subscribing, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye-bye.